when you work with a financial advisor, you see the meetings, you see the conversations, the recommendations, all this stuff is pretty transparent. But what you don't see is often just as important. So today we're going to pull back the curtains a little bit, talk about what's happening behind the scenes that you don't always get to see, but what keeps your plan on track. Welcome into All Things Retirement. I'm Ben George. He's Anthony Aulffo at the Cardinal Wealth Group. And, we're talking about, behind the scenes a little bit, Anthony. We I think a lot of what we do here on the show kind of paints the picture and lets people kind of in a little bit into the conversations that you're having with your clients at the Cardinal Wealth Group. But, I think there's a lot that's happening behind the scenes that people don't see that we want to dive into today.
Yeah, that's fun. Most people really don't know what happens behind the scenes for not just me, but most other advisors out there for sure. It's kind of like the dishwasher rule where, doing the dishes, you want to make sure that you're getting credit for it with your spouse. So a lot of times, want to make sure that I'm doing the dishes where they can actually see Anthony doing the dishes. So this is probably one of those areas where we're not really telegraphing to our clients exactly what we're doing behind the scenes and how much time that we're taking. So excited to talk more about it.
Yeah, we're going to get you some credit for the chores that you're doing around the house today. So let's dive in a little bit. Remember, you can always go to cardinalwg.com to begin your Cardinal success journey. Reach out and begin that planning process. If you haven't done that already, you get close to retirement, now is the time to take those steps. And we'll kind of give you an idea what's happening there inside the office. So what are some of those things in the clients maybe don't realize is happening behind the scenes, especially earlier in the relationship?
Yeah, I would say, the financial planning process is certainly a heavy lift, especially in the beginning process where you're just meeting somebody. They're getting their entire life kind of financially thrown at you. And to prepare for those meetings, which could take initially maybe 3-4 meetings to kind of get your arms around everything, prepare, adjust, and tweak the financial plan. You're probably talking maybe 3 to 6 hours of work to sometimes more if it's more complex to kind of get your arms around it. We're dealing with many different softwares that we're utilizing for different aspects of somebody's life, like a general financial planning software, that will incorporate cash flow modeling, investments, taxes, estate, and protection planning. And then we have different one-off softwares that kind of really drill down into things like your investments or your tax situation, for example. So that area is certainly probably the most intensive initially in one shot or in a series of meetings. And then as you start to maybe normalize the relationship, kind of maybe going out a year, 2 years where you got your arms around it, you've had a lot of meetings to kind of get somebody on board. Then you kind of like the annual regular basis meetings where we're typically having 2 to 3 meetings a year that are kind of scheduled. And so we have to plan and prepare ahead of each of those meetings because people have expectations of what we're going to go over, that we know their situation. So just getting reacquainted with it, updating figures. So you're talking, a couple hours a year per client just to kind of make sure that the systems are accurate and that you're getting reacquainted with the information. Setting up new accounts for new clients, getting them funded, moving the assets over into accounts so that you can manage it going forward. Tax planning on non-retirement accounts, especially when you're taking over new accounts that already have existing investments in them. So it's quite a bit of work there. The analyzing tax returns is certainly a big one where it can be quite tedious. Take somebody's tax return and really kind of comb through it and figure out ways to save them on taxes. And then just from an investment modeling standpoint, looking at the models, how they're performing. So we have a team, thankfully, with that we work with on a regular monthly basis to see, past performance, tweaks that we need to make and things like that along the way. So, those are just some of the things off the top of my head that really are a day-to-day client management system that we're doing on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of little things that are happening behind the scenes there, as you can see. And again, that's what good advisors do, right? There's a lot of pieces to that planning puzzle that you're always kind of you're working on quite a bit. And another big part of being a good advisor in working with your clients is being proactive with a lot of things too, right? And that's a lot of that's happening behind the scenes too, right? Is being proactive rather than just reacting to when a client calls. So, give us some examples of how you guys stay proactive with everybody you're working with.
Sure. Well, on the investment side, I mean, we're thankful that we have a team behind us that really handles the day to day. We used to run the money ourselves, but as we've grown and have hundreds of accounts to oversee, it becomes quite tedious to manage cash management needs like distributions, require minimum distributions, Roth conversions. So having a team that we pay to help us, along with Fatima, client associate person, it can really help get some of these things across the finish line. It's super helpful. And then, as with like the investment strategy, we're having regular meetings, certainly on a monthly basis, to see if there's any changes that we need to make. Sometimes there are, sometimes there's not, but we're going through the same rigorous process where we're back testing strategies as different economic things happen along the way, reviewing the fund performance, the cost of things, and then also just developing new strategies as you might need it for your client base. We recently introduced buffer ETFs. That's a new example of something that we've added where they have downside protection inside the portfolio for some of our more conservative investors. So again, it's just another kind of cog in the wheel of a process that we have to just stay on top of along the way. And then if there's impromptu meetings needed because the market is quite volatile at some point, we're going to have those reach outs with our clients to go over what's happening, how it's affecting their financial plan, and changes that we might have already made or suggest of maybe changing a course from a strategy standpoint for them, if it makes any sense in their situation.
Yeah. Well, that's a good example of the proactive nature that the team there, Cardinal Wealth Group, takes. And, I know you're not meeting all the time with clients, Anthony, right, throughout the year. I mean, some maybe more than others, but what's happening between those meetings, right, that you really are able to kind of dig in and really help kind of determine, what changes need to happen, maybe what needs to be discussed, what might trigger having an extra meeting there, but what's going on between those meetings that you're really digging into?
Yeah, I mean, so when we see events like, I could use an example, when Trump first came into office, a lot of people were very concerned with the tariffs and the impact that it might have. Those kind of created opportunities to have proactive calls, to have discussions about that, and especially some like February to March where the market kind of pulled back like 20%. We wanted to have proactive calls and say, how this could affect you long-term, short-term, why we may or may not want to make changes given that, again, we're long-term investors. So just a way to be more proactive with our clients. So that's kind of more of the upfront, like reaching out. And then there's kind of behind the scenes that our investment team are doing so that we're making proactive changes even without having to disturb them or necessarily notify them. If it's a big major strategy change, we definitely want to get that signed off on. But if we're talking about just changing from one asset, sub-asset class to another, that doesn't really require a call. And that's some of the changes that we made during the kind of the tariff time when it was kind of being first introduced. Also, we have things that just are set inside the portfolio. So when there's some type of drift where, an asset class runs up because it's doing better or vice versa, not doing as well, our software automatically rebalances with a 3% drift automatically. And certainly from just overlooking the strategies, there could be a change, on a monthly or quarterly basis, depending on what's going on. And all this is really just being organized from a CRM system shared calendars, financial planning, case meeting notes, where we're really just trying to stay organized on top of everything to not only deal with clients and follow up that they need, but also all the things that go behind the curtains with our different team members.
Well, if you had a client that actually looked behind the curtains and could see everything that was happening, and we've talked about a lot of that today, but I know there's still more. There's more details that we don't have time to get into, and we haven't talked about here. But what do you think would surprise them the most if they had a chance to truly see everything you're doing?
I would say probably the volume of work that it goes on. Like if you could break it down into tasks, I mean, our task calendar, our CRM system is just hundreds of tasks that have to get done throughout the year, months, and coordinating that with the different team members to really stay organized. We're always talking about this is a service model, and people expect us to follow up with our actions. And I mean, that's certainly how advisors lose people, is by not following up and communicating. So we're always talking about ways to A, stay organized, B, continue to follow up, because there's a lot of times that something needs to happen in somebody's financial plan, like they want to get their estate plan done, or they want to roll over an investment account, and we need them to sign off on things and get things done. And sometimes life gets in their way, and we just have to kind of be a little of a nuisance of following up with them to get things across the finish line. That's one of the reasons that they're paying us, is to get things done for them. And then we're always looking at ways to demonstrate information, like our one-page roadmap that kind of highlights what we just talked about, what we're trying to get done in the near future. We're sending them videos or emails going over like, hey, these are the next steps. So I would just say that just when you have over 100 clients, and it just requires a lot of follow-up. So I would tell you the volume of things that we're doing that people would never know. If you ask my friends, they would think like I don't really do anything and just manage their investments, and there's nothing else happening. And that's something that they kind of joke about, but it's a tremendous lift to manage a client on a year-to-year basis, for sure.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too, where when things are going well, it's kind of easy to assume that, hey, there's not a whole lot happening, kind of doing it on my own, but you're not, right? There's a lot that goes on. There's a team, there's a process, there's a plan that's all kind of working together on your behalf. And a lot of it's happening outside of your purview, right? And
right.
It all comes to head in those meetings.
Well, and that's a kind of a good point, right? So there are times where no change is still in action, right? So we're still going through the process. So like for the investments, maybe this month there is no change, but we're still going through that process. And I find other advisors even, because I'm in different, we'll say advisor groups where we talk about best practices and ways to be better. And one of those things is to let the client know that you did review the account, even if there are no changes, but just to let them know. So that's something that we're even looking at, to even let them know, even if there is no action, that we still went through that process, because it kind of goes back to that dishwasher rule where it kind of would go unnoticed.
Yeah. There's a lot going on, right? And really, that's the whole point of this video, is to try to give you a little idea of what's happening at the Cardinal Wealth Group. But if you want to begin that Cardinal success journey, you can get that free assessment right now to kind of see where you stand and, hey, what's that process look like moving forward for me? You can get in touch right now, cardinalwg.com. Again, all that info is in the show description as well. Check it out there. If you have questions, leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you there. But again, we appreciate you watching this video and being a part of all things retirement. Please subscribe if you haven't done that already. Another episode coming next week. So we'll talk to you again then.
Information provided is for informational purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Please consult a qualified professional before taking any action.